Hey, friends, welcome back to the Content Systems for Growth podcast. If you've been feeling like you're doing all the things, you're podcasting, you're posting, you're writing, but you're still not getting that visibility that you hope for, you're going to love today's conversation. I'm joined by Heather Farris, a Pinterest marketing strategist who has been managing client accounts for over 8 years, friends. She's helped coaches, content creators, and service providers turn Pinterest into their number one traffic source. And she does it all with simplicity, strategy, and a serious sense of humor, friends. Heather actually remembers the days when Pinterest had an end of feed. So, yes, she's been doing this a long time and she knows what works. In this episode, we're diving into how Pinterest can help you grow your business without being glued to social media. Heather's breaking down what kind of content to pin, how to repurpose what you've created, and why Pinterest isn't just relevant, it's a total game changer if you want long-term growth without burnout. So grab your notebook or open that notes app. You're going to want to remember all of the things. Well, hello, Heather. I'm so excited to have you on the show with me today. And I love Pinterest. It's like one of the main things that I have always used in my business since 2016. And of course, as a personal user before that as well. So it has always been part of my content strategy. One, because I always blog content, everything with my website with SEO keywords. But I just think Pinterest just helps take it to that next level because it's a search engine. So I'm curious, what made you start making Pinterest as the center for your business?
Yeah, it actually started when I started my business. I had, like you, used Pinterest pretty much since it was born as a personal user. And just understood the platform so well because I'd been using it pretty much every day for 6 years to that point. So when I started my mom blog, I knew that Pinterest needed to be one of the sources to share the blog. At that point, I didn't even know what marketing was. I just knew that I needed to put my pins there. And I was able to really quickly grow that blog using Pinterest, using just kind of what I already knew, and was able to start doing Pinterest marketing as a service for people, like a side hustle. Like my side hustle was my blog and I still had a full-time job. But then I started offering Pinterest as a service to some bloggers who were traveling or had conferences and they just couldn't pay enough attention to their Pinterest accounts for like a few weeks or a few months. And it went so well that I started permanently offering it as a service and eventually quit my job and did this thing full time. So, like, it's been the focus in the forefront of everything that I've done since the very beginning. And quite frankly, like, it was just an accident. I didn't mean for it to go so well.
It's funny how it happens, right? You accidentally fall into something.
Yeah. I
You didn't know that you were going to love it.
It's just like a gift that fell into my lap because up to that point, I had hated all of the work that I was doing. I didn't like working at a bookkeeping and accounting firm. That's what I went to school for, by the way, Michelle, which is super boring. At least to me. To other people, not so much, but to me, it's awful. So to spend $40,000 on a college education and then not work in that field has been painful over the years to my ego. But this just kind of fell in my lap. And as a millennial, if any other millennials are listening, you probably are well aware of the job hopping that happened, and probably for Gen Z too. Like when you're young in your teens and 20s, you're hopping around jobs a lot. And this is the first thing that I've done and it's been 9 years that I've actually stuck with for this long, and that just speaks to how much I enjoy doing
Mm.
it.
Oh, absolutely. Because that is one of the things that is the job hopping that you'll see. But to make you feel a little bit better, your decision making part of your brain isn't actually formed until you're like
I
25.
I had no
It,
business making certain decisions when I was younger, okay? Listen, none. None at all.
that's okay. We're all in there, right? And then I'm curious as well, because one of the things that when I talk with people, like everyone who talks about social media, like Instagram, Facebook, all of those things. But why do you think Pinterest actually gets overlooked as a really good visibility tool that people should be using for their content?
I think it gets overlooked because it's not instant gratification for most people. You're not getting dopamine hits from it. So I can't post a Pinterest pin and expect it to go like mega viral for the average client in my roster. Whereas on, Instagram, some of my clients have hundreds of thousands of followers or millions of followers even, and they post a reel and depending on the algorithm in the day, it might take off. And that's dopamine. And they think, oh, well, if that one did really well, I'll just keep doing that. I'll just keep using trending audio and I can repeat the same thing. And oftentimes it just doesn't actually happen that way. But Pinterest, I think, really is overlooked because of the lack of dopamine hits. I joke around like Pinterest isn't the McDonald's drive-through. You can't just pull up and order a cheeseburger and it's ready at the next window as soon as you give them your debit card. It's a long-term platform that will give you long-term gains if you are serious about it and you're consistent and strategic.
So if somebody may have used Pinterest in the past and gave up completely, it could have been that they just didn't give it enough time.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's one of the
Okay.
factors.
I can
Another factor might be that they weren't actually doing it very strategically. They weren't using keywords, or they had no board strategy, or they didn't understand how to create Pinterest pins that people actually would click on. There's so many factors. But yeah, if you give up too early, even try those things or know those things or even have enough data, I mean, you can't really say that it didn't work for you because you don't really know.
if they were to start again, then it would be more in the fact of they would need to look for those different keywords and the have a specific strategy.
Everything that I teach and the way that I teach it and talk about it is really from a foundational strategic standpoint. So I want you to think about your business in an SEO manner. So the same way that you would write blog posts and you would look for keywords for those blog posts, I want you to look at your business through that lens. Like, how are people actually finding these pieces of content or this podcast or this product line? What problems are they having that they are searching for on Google or Pinterest or YouTube? And what are those search terms? And then we need to kind of tie all of that together using an SEO strategy. And it spans your entire Pinterest profile. Everything that you do on your profile is rooted in an SEO strategy first. So making sure that if you are going to park your content on Pinterest and you want it to show up there for the long term, that you're doing just a little bit of work up front to find really good keywords, answer the user intent, pair a really good creative graphic with keyword, and it goes on a really good board that's topic focused.
Okay. And I think, did you recently just share that even your Pinterest bio should be more like a sales page than an about me?
Yeah. Oh, okay. So something like that. I published a YouTube video recently talking about boards, and Pinterest recently updated some guidance on board best practices that says boards are like mini landing pages for the user.
Okay, that's interesting. So every board that you create is like a mini sales
It's
page
like a mini
for
landing
users?
page for that topic. So if you have a board on your Pinterest profile that's like content strategy systems in ClickUp, then that little board or landing page would be curated with content strategy topics, information, products, freebies that are related to that topic. So you wouldn't put anything related to Asana or Google Sheets or Monday.com on one about ClickUp, but anything related to content strategy systems using ClickUp would go on that board. So then your title, your board description, and then the content that you would put on that board in the form of pins would all be related to that topic. So then as someone comes along and they find it and they click on the board and they open it up, they can see in one nice picture exactly what your board is about, who it serves, and how it serves that person.
So is having boards very specific like that better than having general boards?
I would always suggest having both. So that was a really very specific board suggestion that I came up with in the moment based on what you do. So if someone were in like the beauty and fashion space, they would have boards around, they could have boards around seasonal skincare, but also like person to person skincare. So someone with super dry skin or someone that lives in a desert with super dry skin is going to have different needs than someone who lives in a latitude somewhere to where I live now, where it's like really wet and moist all of the time. So having boards are specifically serving a certain audience and serving a keyword that's really specific to that audience or that pain point for that audience does tend to yield better results. Now you can go broad, but the issue with any broad keyword, whether it's on your website and you're trying to rank on Google or it's on Pinterest, you're trying to rank on Pinterest, you're competing against a lot of other people who are trying to rank against that really broad keyword as well. So it's not that you don't want to use broad. You do want to use broad, but you also want to use long tail. And the way that I usually teach doing this is to pair the broad with the long tail. So doing like content systems, that's broad. And you might rank for that.
Mhm.
And then for ClickUp
Mhm.
or for podcasters, that adds an extra
Mhm.
layer plus the long tail keyword. So Pinterest will know, okay, they want to rank in content systems for podcasters, but we can also rank them in content systems.
That's very interesting. Very
Yeah.
interesting because I don't think I've heard it explained to that before. So,
Yeah.
yay. Thanks.
You're welcome.
A lot of my listeners, and of course, because it's a content system,
Mhm.
that's the area that they're working to try and improve. If a listener's already creating those podcast episodes or their vlogs, then can she go back and turn those into some sort of Pinterest strategy that doesn't take her
Yeah.
hours or every week be able to get it out there?
So, in relation to content systems, inside of their content system that they're running for their podcast, what I would say is to add in a layer where you would create a graphic or a handful of graphics for Pinterest. You can also use videos. So, if you do have a video podcast or if you are doing Instagram reels to promote that podcast episode where you're doing like the face to camera or whatever, you can repurpose that content Pinterest pins as well. So, you can do the work once for Instagram and then repurpose it over to Pinterest and use it there too. So you can try to cut down on the amount
Mhm.
of work that you're doing by using that method. But in your content system, as you're running a podcast episode through from ideation to publishing, somewhere in there, you are
Mhm.
creating marketing graphics for it, probably for social media
Mhm.
and the website and the podcast player. Like you're going to need cover art for the podcast or whatever. So in that process, find
Mhm.
keywords for Pinterest. And then part of your content system should contain a list of keywords for Pinterest that you want to rank for. And this can be based on your pillars in your podcast. So what pillars do you talk about all the time? The pillars I talk about all the time are organic Pinterest marketing, paid Pinterest marketing, graphic design for Pinterest, and automation for Pinterest. And then lately, I've been talking a lot more about workflows. So those are my 5 main pillars. Inside of those pillars are going to be a list of keywords that are going to be topic focused for those specific topics. Store that keyword list in your content system somewhere. And then each time you are going to create a graphic for Pinterest for a podcast episode, pull one of those keywords, drop it into the template for that graphic, and then use those keywords to write
Mhm.
pin copy and publish it to the most appropriate Pinterest board. So I don't know if it'd be helpful for your users to understand like a general Pinterest strategy, but we can talk about it if that would be helpful.
Yeah. I mean, we would, because one of the things that piqued my interest when you were just talking about it is like having your core keywords.
Mhm.
So I'm going to assume that Pinterest must be a little bit different for keywords. You know, like how with Google, you can run into cannibalization on your
Yep.
website if you use that keyword too many times. And that is not going to be, is it better to actually reuse the same keyword on Pinterest?
Yes. So there isn't a keyword cannibalization on Pinterest. You can use the same
Mhm.
keywords consistently. If you've identified, let's say, 10 brand keywords that are on Pinterest and you want to use those all the time because they are your brand, like they represent everything that you do in your business, then those are keywords that you should cycle through frequently. And you can use them
Mhm.
consistently in text overlays on your graphics, in your titles, or in your pin descriptions. And then I would also encourage you for any brand keywords to create individual boards for those things. So if you do sell a content system, for example, and you have a specific platform that you target, then make a board for that. And then whatever else you have in your main pillars, those should also become Pinterest boards and probably branded keywords that you use frequently And then you can go back to the drawing board every now and then and you can generate new lists of keywords that you want to target. Because it's not just about those 10 keywords. There's so many different people search for things on search engines, and people think about things in different ways than others. And if you're introducing different languages, the way that one person speaks their native language and then they go to English as a second language, the way that they search for things is also going to be different. Be thinking about the different keyword opportunities that you can introduce into your strategy and expand into. So you're not really pigeonholing yourself into like 10 main keywords, but you could use hundreds potentially over the course of months or even years.
Mhm. Okay. That's very interesting. Thank you. You really all the knowledge. Like these are all kind of my own questions
I
that I
love it.
have for you on Pinterest.
Listen, if you have questions, your
Oh,
audience has these questions. So well, it's totally fine.
yes. Yes. But so if someone is just gonna be starting with Pinterest, is there like a you talked about you can go into a strategy. Like, is there
Yeah.
a smart strategy for like I mean, I've heard the term fresh pins and pinning and things like that. Like, are they two different separate strategies or would there be like one strategy that they would use over and over again no matter the content?
Yeah, so
Is that different?
the keyword lists that you generate for your brand, and it really just depends on
Uh-huh.
your business and how similar the topics are that you talk about all the time. If you're like me and you talk about the same topics all the time, then you're probably going to have a pretty evergreen, like consistent list of keywords that you target, and that's really not going to change a lot. As far as the strategy goes, what changes frequently is usually graphics and like what people are responding to and trying out different graphics and seeing how they work, different styles of graphics, different formats, trying video or audio or just image only. And depending on your niche, that's also going to be different. So, what I would say is as a beginner, if you're just getting started on Pinterest, your strategy should be consistency and skill building for yourself first. So I want you to start off by building your Pinterest profile. And you can start by building your Pinterest profile with your main pillar boards. So you might only have like 5 pillars in your business. So you might only have 5 boards to start, and that's fine. I just want you to get started and be consistent about pinning so you can build the skill of Pinterest marketing. And then you can layer in additional strategies, or if you wanted to bump your productivity up from 1 pin a day to 10 pins a day, like you have the skills to do so. It's just a matter of making sure your systems support it. As a beginner, your foundational Pinterest strategy should be inclusive of keywords, creatives, and scheduling to start. And then you will look at your analytics at some point. That's kind of a fourth leg of a Pinterest strategy, is just making sure you're looking at your analytics. But if you're brand new, I would say don't look at your analytics for like 3 months. It's going to make you sad. You're going to see like 1 pin impression, 2 pin impressions. It takes time for this to get going. It takes time for Pinterest to index your content and serve it to an audience. Creating Pinterest graphics probably for the first time, and you probably don't know how to create pins that are going to attract eyeballs or even know why people are things. And this is something you learn over the course of publishing hundreds of pins over months to years. Like it's something you're not going to be good at right away, and that's fine.
And then maybe I'm just going down a completely different rabbit hole. So a lot of the things that I talk about too is like repurposing older content.
Yes.
So rewriting blog posts to make them fresh. So when you rewrite that content and then you create a new pin to go with it, does Pinterest then look as that because it has a new image with it? Does it look as it being new content or does it look at the URL? Does that am I
So
question?
this is totally accurate to what's going on in the realm of Pinterest. If you were to create one graphic or a podcast episode and you were to keep saving that same graphic over and over, Pinterest does not see that as fresh. It sees it as the same graphic, and it's going to lump the analytics for that, no matter how many copies you make, into the same file. Where you really,
Okay.
what you just alluded to is what you really want to do is create fresh new pins. Now, I actually teach and employ a strategy where we have our content system set up, and I have a list of all of my content, products, landing pages, everything, funnel. And I cycle through those
Mhm.
URLs frequently. And sometimes those URLs get cycled through monthly. Sometimes they get pins to them weekly. It just depends on how good of a converter they are in my business. But I don't have very many freebies. I have maybe like 5. So those are always getting new pins. I do have a lot of products that I sell, but my main product being my membership gets pins frequently. Anytime I launch a brand new product, it gets a series of new pins. So really, the fresh pins come in depending on how often you want to promote that content and how often you create new pins for it. It is always a good idea to create new pins for older content. I will never discourage anyone
Mhm.
from doing that unless that older content just doesn't work for your business. It's not converting. It's not what you're doing anymore. In that case, you can retire it and stop making pins for it. But if it is still a good lift for your business, I would encourage you to continue making pins for it. And you might feel like, oh, this is so repetitive. But this is how you rank over time.
That's very interesting because I guess I don't know if I ever understood the correlation that, I mean, obviously it understands what your picture is or the image that you're using. So in my brain, I was thinking it lumped URLs, not the image.
Yeah.
And then that is how it differentiates. That's very interesting to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. You can also take it a step further and you can get really strategic about all the different things that you talk about in a podcast episode. So, take any given podcast episode, if you were to look at it in blog post format, it probably has 10 to 12 header twos of like topics, like overarching
Mhm.
topics that you might talk about. That is 10 to
Mhm.
12 different opportunities for Pinterest pins. And then you can take that and create new angles on it and make even more Pinterest pins if you want to. And then those Pinterest pins can be divvied out amongst the different boards that you create in your board strategy. So I was just on a call with a client earlier and she was asking me, should I create sections or should I create boards for this very specific product line that I have? She sells home decor, she sells furniture. And I was telling her if it's like a big category of product that you sell in your business, let's go ahead and create a board for it. And if it's like a deviation or like a variant of the product, so if it's a wooden chair or a fabric chair or whatever, those can become sections. So then as you're looking at your Pinterest SEO strategy, you can also look at your boards and be like, okay, well, this podcast episode has 5 main topics and it would fit on 3 different boards. So then take one keyword for those boards and make a pin and put it on each board. And now you've spread that content so far. It's like taking a seed packet of like wildflower seeds and like throwing it all over your yard and watching all the opportunities of flowers just like blooming.
Well, and that is not at all how I've ever done my Pinterest. I like that as well. That's a great tidbit because there are so many. I mean, like every single one of your blog posts or your YouTube or blogs that you do.
Yeah.
I don't know if I said blog, podcast, YouTube, but anyways, all of those you do. I'm like, you have all those different sections in there, those little different topics that you talk about. So that's, I love that you can go in there and
Break it down.
change and use those, break it down like that.
Break it down, spread it out, plant new seeds. There's so many
Mhm.
opportunities. I think people just get caught up in the, okay, well, we have this one blog post and I really need to get it out because I have 27 other things to do on my list today. And they just forget
Mhm.
about all the different opportunities. And this is really where I
Mhm.
like to use AI actually is to help me ideate around how to promote content or come up with new angles of like, well, what would someone be looking for? How would this be helpful to them? And then creating content around those. So
Mhm.
it's just a matter of building it and baking it into your content system and building the
Mhm.
skill of doing it because it's achievable for anyone, but it's a matter of like thinking about it and then trying it
Mhm.
out. And then the repetition over time is what builds that skill. And it's going to be a habit
Mhm.
after a long time.
One of the other things too I wanna circle back on because that I really liked about what you said was how you are always promoting your other like, your paid content, always creating pins for those and your freebie and all of those. Do you have, like, a workflow that you'll follow through to make sure that all of that is being done? How it How's your workflow? Maybe I should just stop talking.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So I created a system for myself for clients. I call it the Pinterest system. I created it back in 2017 when I started working with Pinterest clients, and it's just kind of morphed and grown over the years. So in that system, we
Mhm.
have one sheet where we track all of our content. And then depending on how your brain works, you can put products and landing pages and funnels all in there. And then you can use the little drop down things in Google Sheets now to differentiate like this is a blog, this is a podcast, this is a product. And then, so that's just like a
Mhm.
main tracking place. I want every link in my business to be tracked. So I know what I have, just like, you know, inventory wise. So I then
Mhm.
take that and I map it to a planning sheet. And then those planning sheets are the only thing I focus on for the month. So I'm not looking at a list of 200 URLs every month when I sit down and getting overwhelmed by that. I'm looking at a list of 30 or less, and I'm making multiple pins for those URLs. So, as an example, a client of mine has 12 SKUs. She's a product seller and she sells physical products.
Mhm.
Very beautiful. And she only has 12 products. So it's really easy for me to take those 12 products and every month I make a copy of the sheet and I write new copy, I make new images, and then I'm only focused on that one little sheet for the month with those 12 SKUs. But each SKU gets like 5 to 7 different pins. So I'm multiplying it every month and I'm really building up our
Mhm.
content on Pinterest and ranking for different keywords over time based on this little methodology of like really super simple system, spreadsheet based. You don't need anything fancy. I have a tab in the same spot for keywords. I have a tab in there for tracking analytics.
Mhm.
So it's kind of all in the same spot and it just keeps everything streamlined and super simple. So that's what I do. And then the overall system is based on like a not started, in progress, ready for scheduling. I work with clients and they want to review pins. There's a review drop down and then a schedule drop down. So it runs on like a Kanban style, like status system, but it's all in a spreadsheet.
I love those in Google Sheets now that they have that a drop down
I love
with
data-driven
that.
systems. That's what it is. I love them so much.
Yeah, I do too. I'm like, when they put that in there, I was like, yes, this is a game changer with spreadsheets.
Yes, they've caught on to
For
what we're
sure.
doing in their tool, and they've even made them better. Some people are really afraid of spreadsheets, and they're like, "Oh, no, I hate Excel." Honestly, my system doesn't have anything fancy. It's like copy and paste. That's it. If you can copy and paste, you're
Mhm.
good to go.
Yes. Well, I use Notion, which you can kind of put it in that same spreadsheet.
I have a Notion
But
system
I
in the same format, but for Notion, and it's one of my top sellers of, like, digital products. People love it.
Mhm. I know, I do too, and I don't know what it is about it or why I like it so much. It just seems like at first it's overwhelming because you stare at like the blank screen and you're like, "Oh my gosh, what do I do with this?" But once you actually get in there, it's not that. It's like a blank slate, but you can create it with your own mind.
Such
What?
creative tool, and you can do so much with it, from creating docs and notes. You could draft your podcast episodes in there. You could draft your blogs in there. They have a calendaring function that's really good. They have spreadsheet
Mhm.
functionality with functions, I might add. So if you are a spreadsheet function gal or do, they have that. And then, you can use the Kanban style like task tracking system. It's really an all-in-one kind of deal. I think you could even answer emails in there now. So,
Yes.
on the topic of systems, Notion is definitely one of those that if it makes sense for your brain and you're super creative, I think it's a good fit for those people. I don't have the patience for it because it
Mhm.
is like what you said. Like I see a blank and I'm like, oh no, what to do?
Notion in working for your brain. That's one of the things that I do talk about too is picking a system or a content project management system that actually functions for your brain because I've worked with, like I think do you use ClickUp?
I do.
Yeah, I was thinking, and that's another system too where it can be so flexible
Mhm.
because I used it initially in my business. And then when I brought on my virtual assistant, I was spending more time trying to explain to her
Yeah.
how to use it. I was like, what you're familiar with, maybe we'll just move to that.
Yeah. And that's definitely what you have to do sometimes. I do use
Mhm.
Pickup and I have used it for a number of different things, including Pinterest over the years. But I think you just have to get familiar with what works for you and do that.
Yes, and find that. And don't, I think too, it's like you don't want to software hop because it takes so much effort, time and effort to do that. But once you actually find that one that clicks in your brain to stick with it and not move at all from it, you got to do a little
Yeah.
trial and error, I think. So, anyways, back to my long list of questions because I still have like 3 or 4 left. So we just talked about the workflow, but this is one of the things I'm curious about too. I'm thinking now after listening to you, because I had the question in here, like how many pins would you recommend for one blog post? But what I'm really hearing is you can create as many pins to that blog post as you want, but you want to be creating pins for the pieces that convert the highest in your analytics. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, it's usually a really easy win for most people as far as like, most of Pinterest is cold traffic. So you really want to use what's working in your business effectively. The easiest win or, the biggest lift for a lot of people is to use what's already converting in your business. If you know this piece of content converts to email list opt ins or sales of products, let's make pins for that consistently. Because if it's converting for cold traffic
Mhm.
elsewhere, it should work for Pinterest as well. I guess it just depends on the niche. Pinterest isn't really big on like firearms or adult content. So if you create that kind of content, it's probably not a good fit for Pinterest. But yes, you are hearing me say, like, let's start with what's converting and create as many pins as you like.
Mhm.
Just don't publish them all in the same day, please.
Okay. Do you have like a pattern that you follow? I'm very good with
Yeah.
patterns. You say I'm hearing at a minimum of 1 pin a day, but then like, would you follow a pattern? So like this blog post or podcast was released. Would you do like a pin to the blog post and then a pin to that actual podcast episode? Like, would you do it to like Apple Podcast or would you always direct them back to your website?
I prefer owned traffic. So I'm usually defaulting to pinning to my own website because I have a lot more control over the end results. And
Mhm.
if you are podcasting and you do have, it in your future to court sponsors and do brand deals or whatever, one
Mhm.
of the things they're going to ask you is how much traffic does your website get? How much traffic are you getting on your
Mhm.
podcast? How many email newsletter opt ins are you getting? It's going to be really hard to grow that if you're always sending traffic to third party platforms. So, yes, you can send traffic to the podcast players. I don't really recommend doing that though. I would rather you embed the podcast player into the blog post show notes and just put it on your website where you own
Mhm.
the traffic.
Okay. That makes sense. And that would be one of the defaults that I would recommend to people as well, because you can track
Yeah,
where or your, Google Analytics and look at that. But I was just curious if I was wrong on that for some
you are
reason.
right
But
on that.
anyway, good deal. I think we talked about this one, but I didn't ask this question. You talked about like if something's not relevant to your business any longer or you're not wanting to promote it, do you ever go back and delete old pins that no,
Now,
don't even worry about it?
what I do on my website, because I don't like there to be dead links from Pinterest, platforms don't really prefer
Mhm.
404 pages and redirects. They
Mhm.
tolerate redirects over 404 pages. So I don't really want to lose any trust with a platform. What I do instead of deleting things is just redirect them. So if there's a category on my website that I just don't talk about anymore and I don't want to talk about anymore and I want to unpublish those blogs, I'll do a 301 redirect from that blog to something that's more relevant these days. That way, the pin still
Mhm.
works. If someone finds it, they click on it, it goes to the website, but it's getting redirected. So it's not the best experience in the world because if you did a Pinterest pin for white wedding dresses that are, 1930s style or whatever, and they land on a mid-century
Mhm.
modern wedding dress category page because you just don't do that one anymore, they're gonna be a little probably
Mhm.
confused and they might click around a little bit or you might even lose that viewer, but it's better to not lose trust with the platform and have a ton of 404 pages than, one or two viewers here and there from really old content that probably isn't getting served much.
Well, that's good. That's good to know because I would have probably spent a lot of time going back and deleting old pins.
Just keep going.
But
Put your foot on the
yeah,
gas and keep.
I do a lot. I do a lot of not full URLs and your redirects of old
Yeah,
content. So I'm good with
you're all good.
it's and I know you help specifically creators and coaches.
I do. Yeah, creators, coaches, and occasionally e-commerce stores, although I don't do as much of the e-commerce anymore. And I don't do as much in advertising
Mhm.
anymore either. It's just not my cup of tea. I can do it. It's not my preferred thing.
Mm.
Of course, creators, coaches, content creators, people that are primarily creating long form content, solving problems, and then their solutions are generally services or digital products.
And then do you think like there's a certain mind shift which that people need to see to be successful on Pinterest or
Yeah.
when people, like that whole instant gratification that we talked about before with others, like, is there a mindset shift that they need to make to know that, hey, it's okay. Like, I might not be seeing it in Pinterest, but even though I'm not seeing it now, I'm going to be seeing it down the road. So just need to be patient and it's okay.
Yeah, so generally what I teach is super foundational to any creator and it will last like a long time because it's all based on SEO. It's based on an SEO strategy and people are still very much searching on platforms. Until the day comes when just search bars don't exist anymore, it'll be this way. And people will have problems and they'll go to the search bar and they'll search for something. The mindset shift that I would say is the most common that I talk about the most frequently is to use Pinterest as a parking lot for your content. I don't want you to obsess over the analytics every single day or every single week. Like, look at them monthly, or you could even look at them quarterly if you wanted to. But what I want you to focus on instead is building your library of content on Pinterest, taking your content, making Pinterest pins, publishing it to the platform, and then trying to rank for multiple different URLs for every piece of content that you have. Multiplying that over time is almost guaranteed that you're going to see more traffic from Pinterest than a social media platform any day of the week. But this takes time. It can take anywhere from 9 to 12 months of really consistent penning to see that lift happen off of the x axis and like going up. So, the mindset shift I really want your listeners to take away is that this takes time. We're not going to watch the pot boil. We're going to run our content system. We're going to create Pinterest pins. We're going to park them on the platform and we're going to let people find us. And we're going to meet them where they're at in their search queries. And over time, it's going to build. And the great part about Pinterest and part of this mindset is that it is a longevity platform. Pins that you pin today could very well be your top pins years from now, consistently driving traffic to your website. When people are thinking about a platform that is going to be an ROI driver for years, Pinterest truly can be one of those.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, but I like long living
Yes,
content.
quite literally, it's all I focus. Email marketing, YouTube, search engines, even though people are freaking out about the AI results these days, like I'm just like riding it. And Pinterest. Those are my platforms. I'm not worried about dancing on reels. I'm not looking for trending audios. I just care about I want to be able to close my laptop and walk away from my desk knowing that people are looking for me on the internet any given day of the week. And I'm going to come up. I came up for you. Here we are.
Yes, you did. Yes, exactly. Yep. Yeah. And I found you, and then I was like, oh, I really like this girl. She's got some great stuff. Well, look, again, thank you so much for meeting with me on Friday afternoon. My husband was like, what were you thinking? And I'm like, Friday's the day where I focus on my business and not doing all my client work. So that's why. But I think so many of us can get caught up in that trap of we need to be posting on social media. And if you look at what you actually get from that, it's just not the return on investment that you can get using Pinterest or, even Google. Like, yes, to track it's going down. And I'll admit, like 9 out of 10 times, I go to Chat GPT and ask all my questions because it just gives me the answer and I don't have to sit through everything.
Yeah.
But it's getting that done because it's searching the internet, I mean, regardless, it's still using that content that you have worked hard with keywords,
Yeah.
no matter.
Well, and
Keywords are the
I
thing.
don't know about you, but my recent ChatGPT usage, it's if I go there and I type in like how to connect to Thrive cart to wish list, which is a current problem I'm having. It's gonna pull up all these
Mhm,
articles into ChatGPT and it's gonna give me links. And then I
mhm.
click on those links and I go to the website. And then from there, it's like, yes, it's pulled it all together for me in a nice, neat little pattern. And then I don't have to worry about looking at the 10 links. I don't use ChatGPT a lot in that way, but if I am ideating or researching, I do love that it gives you links and you can still get traffic.
Mhm. Oh, yes, absolutely. And that's one of the things too that for my clients when I'm building out their content is do a lot of how, why, frequently asked questions and
Mhm.
make sure that those are in their blog post because that'll be things that it pulls. I mean, this is how I used it the other day. I planted herbs at my house
Mhm.
like years ago. And I'm like, what are these things? Because, I don't know anything about plants. And I took a picture and chat and I said, "What is this?" And it because I'm like, "Is this basil?" And it came back and goes, "No, this is oregano." And I was like, "With dill growing in it." And I was like, "Okay, thank you very much."
That's so
But
funny. I have
it
plant
worked.
app for that because I love plants. Before I moved to the Netherlands, I had like over 50 houseplants. And I started with like four, and all of them just had babies over time. Or I picked up new rescues from the grocery store. That's what I would say is I would rescue
Uh-huh.
plants from the grocery store. Yeah. So, it is interesting what and Pinterest can do this too, by the way. If you take a picture of something with the lens thing, yes, Pinterest had lens before Google had lens. There's a function in your Pinterest app where you can take a picture of a product. So if you're in a store or you're shopping or you're eating a meal or something, you can take a picture of it with your phone with the Pinterest app and it will search Pinterest for relevant pins related to that thing. So remember how you said earlier
Really?
in this episode, Pinterest can read what's in the image? That's the software. That's the technology.
Oh my goodness. How have I gone this long without knowing that information?
Well, that's it. So it might not
Yeah,
tell
especially
you this oregano and it has dill growing in it as well, but it will pull up like if you were looking for alternatives to like flowers to plant for this. I actually do this when I'm on vacation.
Mhm.
I take pictures of things because I really like it. So like a chair or a plant or an outfit or whatever. And then I want to search for it later, but I sometimes forget. So at least I have it in my camera roll. Well, you can load those pictures in from your camera roll, or you can take a picture live with the app and it can search the platform for things that look like that. So whether you're shopping, whether you're curating, whether you're just bored and you want to see what's on there, it's a function.
Mhm. Well, cool. Now I'm like, where can I use that
Mm.
function?
I used it a
Well, that's
lot in
cool. Well,
Lowe's. That's where I used to use it.
oh, for sure. Oh, I can see that. Yeah. Okay. We're getting to the end of the episode. I've asked all my questions, which I can't even believe that I got through my long list of questions because I had
It
quite
was a
the list
lot,
going
but it was
on. I
okay.
was adding.
We did it.
It was. I know. I know it was a lot, but I was like, I just kept adding to it and adding to it and adding to it. And I didn't mean to, but I was like, curious about this. I'm curious about that. And this will be a longer episode because I usually have them smaller. But I know, Heather, you talked about that you only have a handful, like 5 free items or freebie, but you do have one that I'm going to put in our show notes, and that's your Pinterest strategy guide.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to tell us a little about that.
Yeah. So my Pinterest strategy guide has morphed over the years into it's almost like a mini Pinterest course in and of itself. It has
Yeah.
a reference guide at the front where I reference different like videos or, tutorials for how to do things throughout the guide. And
Mhm.
then I will have those linked at the front end of the guide. And then I talk about what a Pinterest strategy is and what are all the components to a Pinterest strategy. And then I have
Mhm.
worksheets and like checklists in there. So I have like a Pinterest audit worksheet in there where you can audit your Pinterest account. I have recently added a checklist for the guide itself. So, like, starting your Pinterest profile, like, what are all the things that you need to do? There's a
Mhm.
checklist for that. There are example workflows inside of it, and this is a workflow that I actually run inside of my business. My Pinterest workflow, general workflow is there. And that's like the consensus of the guide. It's so comprehensive and it's a really solid place for people to start without ever having to pay for anything right away. Like they can just download the guide and consume it, implement, and I bet they'll see results.
Yeah, well, it sounds like it has a lot of there's a lot of
And I
information in
keep it
it, a lot of
updated.
great information.
Yeah. And I update it 2 to 3 times a year on average. So it just got an update this spring.
Wow, that's awesome because not everybody goes back to update all of their products to keep it relevant
Yeah.
or their free products that they put out. So that's very I appreciate that very much. Thank
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so you kind of hit on it a little bit because when we talked about long form, but is there any other place that you hang out besides Pinterest, YouTube, Google?
Instagram stories. I love doing stories on Instagram. It's most of the time it's about my personal life and like what I'm up to or what nonsense I've
Mhm.
gotten myself into or these like lately these last few weeks I've been sharing a lot about my move and if you want to
Mhm.
connect with me over there, I have a lot of people slide into my DMs and ask questions over there. So I'm pretty much in stories and DMs on Instagram and that's the only social media platform I really do anything with.
Good. Well, thank you so much, Heather, for coming in and dropping all your wisdom on Pinterest. Like I said, greatly appreciate you answering all of my questions that I've been curating for you.
I'm so appreciative of your
Um,
questions. Thank you for asking such great questions.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I don't know if you have any final parting words before I let you go today, but I'll let you give them if you do.
I think, I just hope your listeners take one little piece from today. Don't let it overwhelm you. There's really nothing you can mess up, okay? Just try it out. And if you're like new to Pinterest and you're just unsure, I would actually encourage people to just download the app and poke around on it for a couple of minutes a day for a few weeks and just get familiar with the platform and how Pinterest curates content for people and what's happening over there. And then maybe dip your toe in by, doing some of the
Mhm.
things that I talked about today. Don't let it overwhelm you and don't stay stuck. So if you do have questions, like come find me. I'm always around.
Well, excellent. Thank you so much for that. Again, I appreciate your time.
Of course, Michelle, thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. You have a good day. I loved that conversation with Heather. She makes Pinterest feel so doable, even if you're short on time and energy. And if you've ever felt like your content is disappearing into the void, I hope this episode gives you a fresh perspective and a few next steps. Heather also has a free Pinterest strategy guide you can download right now. It's packed with practical tips to help you start using Pinterest with intention without the overwhelm. So go ahead to heatherfarris.com/Pinterest strategy guide to grab it today. I'll put the link down below in the show notes. And if you're ready to finally start building some content that works for your life, not against it, check out my easy content repurposing package. You'll walk away with 5 days of strategic content pulled from just one podcast episode. No extra content required. Head over to my website for all the details. Again, I'll put the link in the show notes down below. Thank you, friend, for listening today. I appreciate your time and I hope you make it a wonderful week. Yay! Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you found this episode valuable and learned some actionable tips that you can implement in your business so that you can feel accomplished and less stressed. If you enjoyed this show, please take a quick minute to share this with your business bestie, subscribe, and leave a review. It helps me reach more business owners just like you. And if you have any questions or topics you'd like me to cover in future episodes, please reach out to me on my website. I've created a form just for you. Remember, with the right system and mindset, you can achieve the success your heart desires. Thank you for tuning in. I look forward to chatting with you next time. I appreciate you, and I hope you have a wonderful week. And don't forget, let's grow, friends.